This video is going to highlight some of the major issues related to shift work and the aging healthcare workforce. What do we mean by shift work? Shift work is necessary when a business wants to provide services or maintain production 24 hours a day, or somewhere close to 24 hours a day. And what this means is that workers are going to need to work at nights exclusively, or they're going to have to rotate between day shifts and night shifts. So that's what we mean by shift work. And of course, it's really important in hospitals and in nursing homes in the healthcare sector because hospitals and nursing homes have to provide care 24 hours a day. We're going to start talking about how shift work is related to the aging of the healthcare workforce by focusing on something called the circadian rhythm, which is something you may have heard about. The circadian rhythm is a biological process that's at work in each one of our bodies. And it's a process that's regulated by the sun rising in the morning and setting in the evening. And the circadian rhythm is a process that affects all sorts of body functions, including regulation of core body temperature, regulation of our blood pressure, regulation of hormones in our bloodstreams, and also it can affect our mental alertness, which is why we get a little bit fuzzy when it's late at night, when our body's ready to rest. That's our circadian rhythm preparing us for a nighttime of sleep. And most of the time, this isn't a problem, but sometimes if this mental alertness issue becomes a big enough issue, it can result in fatigue, it can affect employees' performance, and it can result in errors, which makes shift work both a patient safety issue and a worker safety issue. So we need to be paying close attention to how shift work can influence workers, both for their own sake, but also for the sake of patients. Because as it turns out, our circadian rhythms are affected by shift work. And so shift work has the potential to affect any body functions that are influenced by circadian rhythm, including but not limited to the ones listed here. Now we also know that this circadian rhythm sort of changes as people age. And so as we age, it's becomes more common to have sleep disturbances. We also know from research that older workers have a tougher time adapting to changes in shifts than younger workers do. And research also suggests that women tend to be more affected by sleep disruptions and by changing sleep patterns than men are. So let's just start by asking a question. Okay, so what could be done? I'm not making any recommendations to your particular employer, but what could we do in light of the fact that there are going to be more older workers on the job in the coming decades? Well, you might say that people have a pretty good sense of what their sleep cycles are, so giving them more control over their schedules could be one way to adapt. Providing facilities and protected time for people to nap on site is something that people are proposing primarily in Europe. We don't really see that much here in the United States, although we see it some. And then another potential solution would be to develop and evaluate different shift schedules, different ways of getting the work done, to see what the ideal schedule would be. Now that's of course really, really tricky in healthcare because staffing and scheduling is such a complicated issue, and it also would require involvement from all levels of the organization, from the management down to the supervisors, down to the employees. And so for various reasons, developing and evaluating alternative shift schedules is challenging. But some people have done this. Some people from Finland published a study looking at a controlled intervention on the effects of a particular type of shift schedule on different outcomes. This wasn't particular to healthcare, but we'll go through sort of what they did. So essentially, they went from an old shift schedule to a new shift schedule, and they evaluated what the effect was, and there was a control group that didn't have their shift schedule change. Now I'm going to start by describing what this figure means. I'm going to interpret this figure because it illustrates what was done. So the old shift schedule had morning, evening, and night shifts. And the morning shift was from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. The evening shift was from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. And the night shift was from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And people would work 3 morning shifts in a row. Then they would have 2 days off. Then they would work 3 night shifts in a row. And then they would have 2 days off, and then they would work 3 evening shifts in a row, and then they would have 2 days off and start over again. Now this schedule, the researchers called this a continuous backward rotating 3-shift system. It's a lot of words, I know, but that's what they were using, and that's what the control group used throughout the course of the study. But the intervention, the sort of test schedule, this new shift schedule, had a little bit of a different schedule. So the shifts were different. The morning shift was from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m., a little bit longer. The evening shift was from 3 p.m. to 1 a.m., again, a little bit longer. And the night shift was from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. And as opposed to working 3 morning shifts, taking a break, and working 3 night shifts, and so on, the new shift schedule would have people work a morning shift one day, and then the very next day they would work an evening shift, and then the very next day after that they would work a night shift, and then they would have 2 days off, and then they would start over again. And that's what this figure shows here over on the right. Morning, evening, night, 2 days break, morning, evening, night, so on and so forth. And the term that they used for this shift schedule was that it was a very rapidly rotating shift system. And they looked at a number of outcomes, including general health, social life, well-being at work, and family life. And while we don't want to make too much out of one study, the outcomes were favorable in all accounts for both younger workers, who these researchers defined as being under 45, as well as workers who were 45 and over. So you saw improvements in general health, social life, well-being at work, and family life for the new rapidly forward rotating shift system compared to the controls. So the point I want to make here is that some shift schedules might be better for older workers' health than other shift schedules. And in this case, it looks like this particular shift schedule is in some ways a universally designed shift schedule because it's good for both younger workers and for older workers compared to the standard way of doing business.